It's a wonderful time when the World Cup comes along. Hardly any traffic on the road. And the telephone rarely rings. A sign that people are really working hard in the office, ignoring all that's happening while the match is going on. I must say, beloved, I'm pleasantly surprised to see so many of you here this morning, knowing that there's a match soon to start. Here's a little secret. You all have your teams, as I do. But I heard that the more collection you give, the more chances your team has of winning. So feel free to be as generous as you can in support of your team. Beloved, today we celebrate Father's Day. I invite all men in the congregation who are daddies, please stand. Round of applause, please, beloved. Thank you, my dear daddies. Happy Father's Day. Yesterday's front page of The Observer, anthropologist Dr. Gale said the following. In a 2016 survey, 42% of Jamaican families have a father who is present. 42%. My words. That means that 58% of our Jamaican families have an absent father. When you think about that reality, you see what can guide our prayer. Because there are many children growing up without a father figure, a permanent father figure in the home. And then when they become adults, that lack is sometimes hard to be replaced. And it leads to sometimes chaos in future relationships. Beloved, fatherhood, by blood or relationship, is a gift from God. And who is God? God is our Heavenly Father. In the context of the gospel, fatherhood is about doing our part and allowing our Heavenly Father to do the rest. You heard the gospel reading? The sower plants the seed, and then he goes to sleep. A mixture, a combination of the earth, rain, sun, perhaps fertilizer, allows the seed to sprout and grow. We plant, but it is God who gives the growth. This is what Paul means when he says, we walk by faith, not by sight. If we keep looking, sometimes we fail to see. But if we have faith and keep planting the necessary seeds, God will give the increase. Since all that we do, beloved, comes from the Spirit of God, I thought we'd ponder Galatians 5:22 to 23 this morning, which says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So rather than your usual 3-point homily, you'll get a 9-point homily. But don't worry, I know you have the World Cup to go and watch, so we'll keep them all short. The first, love. Fathers, that is, you have a chance and a choice to love your family. Anyone can become a father. But the choice to exercise love and be present to your respective families is something you are called by God to do. As beings of love, God created you to love. When you choose to love your family and be present, you become the face of God for your spouse and for your children. Let me ask you, my dear daddies, sometimes when you're journeying with a family, the pressures of life can make us take things for granted. How often do you express love, practical, tangible love with your spouse and with your children? How often do you show them with a hug or a kiss what they really mean to you? We all have to be careful. But my dear daddies, remember this. Your sons are looking at you to see what example you are setting so that they can have something in their minds to say, that's what I want to be when I grow up. The daughters are looking to you, my dear daddy, asking the question, if daddy is so loving, can I find someone like him to be my future husband. So, my dear daddies, I will always encourage you and, dare I say, challenge you. Don't be afraid to show love to your spouse and to your children. In fact, don't be afraid to show love to your spouse in front of your children. A hug, a truce, saying, I love you. When was the last time you serenaded her? That answer says it all. In keeping with this psalm, make a joyful noise, and in keeping with the spirit, perhaps today you can go home, take her by the hand, call the children, look into her eyes, and maybe say the following. Your love is like a burning fire, where? Way down in my soul. Now, half of you may not know that song. So perhaps you can use the other one. I've found a love for me. Darling, just dive right in and follow my lead. You can go home and Google the words. But the more you show love to your spouse in front of your children, the more you're teaching your children what it means to live as a family. And love is not just to be said in words, it is to be expressed in concrete actions. So, my dear daddy, choose to love. Choose to show love and be the example of love for your family that God has called you to be. The second, joy. True joy comes from knowing God who has called you to fatherhood. And this God who calls you to become a daddy is always with you. We hear in Nehemiah 8, the joy of the Lord is my strength. So, my dear daddies, I ask you this question this morning. Does your family see that you are joyful being the spouse and the daddy in the house? Do the children see joy radiating in you, from you, and through each time you come into their presence? Does your spouse see the joy that you have each time you look into her eyes or draw close to her? Just like the Christian life, if we do not show joy to others, when we say we believe in Jesus, how will we convince them that the joy of the Lord is my strength? And the same thing is true of your family. You, my dear brothers, who are called to fatherhood, must radiate that joy, because that is your vocation, to be the face of a joyful Christ in their presence. And if you find the joy waning because of all the stresses of life, just simply turn to the Lord and say, Lord, give me the joy that I need so that I can continue to infect my spouse and my children with a joyful knowledge of knowing that you have called us to be one family in your sight. Your joy should inspire your family. If daddies are supposed to be the head of the household, let it be that the joy of the Lord radiates from you each time you encounter them. And then you will find the strength of the Spirit truly alive in you. The next, peace. Jesus spoke peace to his disciples while he journeyed with them. Then after his resurrection, he came and once again spoke peace to them. And because he kept speaking his peace to them, they became spiritual fathers of the early churches. My dear brothers, in all things and experience, strive to be at peace. Draw close to Jesus, who is the source of peace. Let the Lord guide you. What do I always share with you? I cannot give what I don't have. If I am never at peace because I have so many issues going on in my mind or in my life, how am I going to be an instrument of peace for my family and indeed for all the people in my circle? But when we draw close to God and hear him speaking his peace to us, as we hear at every single celebration of the Mass, let that peace sink in, so that you can become a peacemaker in the house or wherever the Lord leads you. Which then logically leads to the next, patience. Daddy, you know what I'm going to say. You will be tried and tested. by your spouse, and by your children. You don't have to answer right now because you might be sitting beside them, but you will be tried. My dear fathers, remember this. As God is patient with you, so you are called to be patient with your spouse, with your children, and all in your life. Not every statement needs a response. Not every experience has to be addressed. Sometimes just asking for the grace to be patient is enough. And with time, with the passage of time, all will be well. Kindness. How can you truly be kind when you have this job to do, when you have to take the children to school, when you have to look after the wife as best as you can? It's not going to be easy being kind if you're constantly being pulled about. So here's my suggestion. It's not the only one you can use, but here's my suggestion. The only way you're going to practice kindness is to budget your time properly. We, as fathers, whether by blood or relationship, need to practice being kind to ourselves. Make time to eat properly. Make time to exercise. Get time to rest, as you heard in today's gospel. For when you are at peace with yourself and you're being kind to yourself, that is the only way you're going to be kind to other people. Very often when you experience meanness from others, it's because one of those three elements usually is missing. And one of the three elements that's missing is something that the other has to address, not you. Here's another aspect of kindness. Kindness challenges each of us to always see the good, think the good, and speak well of others. Don't go and complain about your wife with your other friends. Don't go complain how the children are giving you a hard time. It's part of the journey. Learn how to be kind. But it starts with self, so that you can be kind and good with those in your life, which then leads to goodness. Brothers, you cannot go wrong doing the good. Sometimes you will question, why do I have to do this? Sometimes you may be tempted, my other brothers aren't doing it. And sometimes you may even ask, why should I even continue? It seems like all the good gets unappreciated. But brothers, the God who calls you is a good God. The God who led you to this vocation is a God who is always going to give you grace that you need. So in goodness, do all that you can to reveal the loving God, the good God who is with you. Faithfulness. God is always faithful to us, beloved. Do your best to be present to your family and to your community, and faithfully carry out your duties. Please understand the following. If it is true that 58% of our Jamaican families have absent fathers, be gentle and patient with some of the children you encounter, because they are carrying a heavy load. Here's the other truth about Jamaican life and Jamaican culture, which we explored last week. Many children who grow up without the father figure present, when they become adults, they may not know it. It becomes more difficult in terms of either establishing a relationship or being a source of unity and harmony. The lack that is present as a child turns to a teenager, turns to a young adult. That lack doesn't vanish because the person is an adult. And sometimes that person has to get help. For you, my dear brothers, be kind to the people that you meet, because they are having sometimes things going on in their lives that weren't present when they were children. And it's part and parcel of our Jamaican culture. When you find that you may be too stressed to handle something in the home or in the workplace or wherever you are, don't be afraid to get help yourself. You know the saying, no man, let's make it inclusive, no one is an island. We cannot save the world, but we can only do our part. When I first became a priest 20 years ago, Monsignor Makian said the following to me: there are some that you cannot save in this life. When I first heard it, I thought it was a cold statement by a miserable old man. Don't get me wrong, I love him dearly. But I have come to see the truth of that statement as I've journeyed with people. Because if people choose either not to get help, not to take time to learn, listen, and understand, there's not much one can do. All we can do is sow and scatter the seeds as we hear in the gospel and leave God to do the rest. And sometimes it's not in this life, but in the one that's to come, that the grace will be revealed. Gentleness. Brothers, don't be afraid to be gentle. Meekness is not weakness. Many people misunderstand meekness. Meekness is not weakness. In our culture, people are so primed that it doesn't take much for an individual to get sparked off in a course of anger. And the voice gets elevated. And the choice of words that come, sometimes plain, sometimes veiled, shows the anger going on inside. What does Scripture say? A soft answer, what? Turns away wrath. So the more the other, whether in the home or wherever you find yourself, raises the voice or the temper, the more you, my dear brothers, we are challenged to be gentle. But I will go even one step further. As I said to you earlier, not everything we necessarily need to respond to. Sometimes the most loving thing when you encounter darkness or stubbornness or irrationality in others, sometimes the most loving, gentle thing you can do is just be silent. Remember you were taught sometime, a long time ago, silence is golden. Not everything needs to have a response. And when you learn and listen and see where the other is at, if you can, give a gentle answer. And if you realize that the other still has a long way to go, just be quiet and offer a prayer. Which then leads us to the final point, self-control. My dear brothers, be masters of your emotions. Never let your emotions get the better of you. Be masters of your senses. As you take in and digest everything around you, never let them control you, but harness them and show that you are in control. Sometimes it won't be easy, but that's why we have the Spirit of the Lord. When we learn self-control, it is then we see the Spirit of God truly active in our lives. There's a certain truth with all that you just heard. Although you heard 9 virtues, it's not 9 fruits. It's one fruit with 9 slices. So sometimes we take a bite of one slice, sometimes we take a bite of another slice. But the real Son of God, the one who is called especially to a vocation to being a father by blood or relationship, is the one who bites the entire fruit, so that all 9 slices become part of our lives. Can you do it? Of course you can. God has called you to it. Will you open yourself to the grace that the Spirit gives? Well, that's for each of us to answer. But one thing is certain. God who calls us to follow Him, to serve Him, will always give us the grace we need to do what is expected. May we, beloved, continue to do all that we can to truly live as sons, daughters, people in whom our God is well pleased. To Him, beloved, be glory and praise forever and ever.